All right, welcome back to round number 3 of 4 here in Portland, Oregon, hanging out inside of Guardian Games for Matter Mondays or Portland Paper. I'm Travis Cooper here, hanging out with my co-commentator who is going to breach the vastness between Legacy and Modern here.
Yeah, we can't play Breach and Legacy anymore, but boy, is it legal in Modern. So, for this matchup, we have Chris Wamsley playing some Demir Werza and Manfred Mueller playing some Breach combo. So, for those unfamiliar, this is a grinding station Breach deck. Has kind of popped on the scene. Pascal. Oh no, I can only think of Pascal Siakam, who's a basketball player.
Maynard.
Pascal Maynard.
I
Uh,
think are they both French? I think Pascal Siakam's French. Is Pascal Maynard French?
I don't know. I don't know. The deck probably was there before, but he was kind of the first one on Twitter to kind of post a list, and a lot of people refer to his list. Um, but anyway, so we're gonna be able to see some combo fun. So before we were talking about players that like to sit alone and go through lines without an opponent, and
Uh,
both of these decks are good at that. So
I don't think Manny is playing Urza, although I could be wrong. But I'm pretty sure they're on Imri. There we go. I remember. So everyone's been like the ban and unban stuff on Reddit, etc. There's this one chain of like, can we unban artifact lands? It seems like with Mox Opal gone, they're not that bad. I'm like, can you think about if you play like artifact land, Mox Amber, then you can play an Emery on turn 1 and then still use your Mox Amber to
yeah.
cast something else. It's like, no.
Hmm. Well, Chris is just hanging out here. Looks like there's an Ice Fang Caudal in hand.
No, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're playing I think we're on
Oh
Sultai.
yes.
We're on Sultai control here. Oops.
It's definitely Sultai something.
There's gonna be an arrow. That's something I can tell you.
Yes, also our very own Urchin Collie writes for Hipsters of the Coast and is extremely intelligent, and the articles I'm sure are very good. So take a look if you're interested in the deck that Manny is playing.
So smart and so talented and so fashionable.
Mm-hmm.
Makes us all look bad.
Mm-hmm.
But you
Yeah, I
can't
don't
look at
write
us
any
tonight. We don't even
articles.
have face cams.
That's true. You wouldn't see that I am not wearing plaid today.
I am wearing plaid today.
On brand. Can we talk for just a second about how much I love that snow-covered plains? I think it's one of the few where I actually think the art, even though I'm being forced to play snowlands in some cases, I think that particular plains is just so beautiful. Doesn't Drown in the Lock only counter? Is it just any creature or spell?
It's CMC with the amount of cards
Okay,
equal to
and
what's in your graveyard.
it can counter
It can
any.
counter a spell. It's a counter spell. Counter target spell with a CMC equal to or less than the amount of cards in
How
an
could you
opponent's graveyard.
drown? How could you drown that in a lake? I don't understand.
Grinding station, like a dam breaks or something, it gets flooded.
I don't think it can drown.
Just comes back. Uro. That must signal that either it's a desperation move or we've got a force negation in hand. I think we're digging for a force negation right now is what's happening, and that's why that Uro was played. I'm unsure, I haven't seen Chris's hand, but I feel like right now you're like, ooh, counterspell or bust.
Hmm.
Don't think we picked it up, so do we get to watch a combo turn happen? Does Manny have the combo? Does Chris have force negation? Known unknowns.
Yeah. Does Manny have breach? Because once you got breach, the combo kind of plays itself, and we do have all of the other pieces required at this point. So
Oh. Uh,
that's a breach.
uh-oh.
So, all right. Chris is going to allow this to happen for educational reasons. He is basically giving Manny the concession here, but we are going to get to watch how this combo works. So if you're unfamiliar, Grinding Station is kind of the key card in this combo. I mean, I guess Underworld Breach, there are a lot of key cards in this combo. You need all of them. Grinding Station is what's allowing Manny to mill. Grinding Station taps to mill 3 cards from the top of your library to your yard. It untaps when you play an artifact. Underworld Breach allows all of the cards in your yard to have escape 3, so you can remove 3 cards from your yard to cast a card from your graveyard. So Manny's just continually trading 3 cards to cast to mill off the top of their library and then play Mox Amber. So we're kind of netting no cards at that point. However, Manny is able to tap the Mox Amber for mana every time this sequence happens. So Manny will mill their entire library into their yard 3 cards at a time, eventually milling Thassa's Oracle, and with the remaining fodder in the yard and the mana gained by Mox Amber, will cast Thassa's Oracle with no cards in library. Thassa's Oracle will go, and the ETB trigger will happen, and then as the trigger resolves, Manny will win the game. So that's the combo in a nutshell.
Are you still sad?
No.
Okay. We've gotten over it.
Yeah, and it's not Legacy, so
Okay.
this deck does not look nearly as fun to me as the Legacy deck, to be honest. I think they're like completely different types of decks for completely different types of players.
What type of player plays Breach combo in Modern?
I think the same type of player that likes Mox Opal and KCI type decks.
Okay.
And I think the Legacy player is actually maybe more akin to somebody that likes combo control for the Breach deck. I think that's why you see players like Anurag Das, who's a Miracles expert, so into the deck, as well as kind of some of the other like High Tide players. But anyway, I digress.
I love High Tide. Every now and then I'm like, should I buy the last couple cards I need for High Tide? No, it's gonna be like $200. Like, yeah, it looks really fun.
For the time spirals.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to play the Spiral Tide version. Yeah. Yeah. Well. Rachin simplified my explanation. All right. Well, so Manny won game 1. Pretty clean combo. I mean, that's kind of exactly what you want to see. Was able to play through a piece of disruption on Chris's side, and still combo in a fairly timely manner. One of the amazing things about this Breach combo deck and just kind of Breach in general is you can get your kind of various combo add-ons countered, like your Grinding Stations or your Moxen or whatever, and the only card, the truly key card, is Underworld Breach. So the deck begins and ends with that card. If you have a stocked yard, you can also sometimes get where you need to go even if you don't have all the combo pieces by flashing cantrips or other cards back with Underworld Breach, or something like an Emery if you're just hoping to mill a Grinding Station to be able to cast it via Breach and then go off. So your yard in this deck is just kind of a font of I wouldn't call it mana exactly, but it's just kind of like a font of available game actions once you cast an Underworld Breach.
And the Breach combo deck is playing, depending on which build you're on, I think somewhere between like 2 and 4 Teferi Time Ravelers in it. So a lot of times you're like, well, here's the thing. Can you deal with this Teferi? Nope. Okay, now I'll do the win the game thing.
There we go. I like that, Urshan. Font of Wonders. That's a good one. Okay, Chris has decided to keep, and Manny will as well.
Didn't even go the rundown on the sideboards, but I'll just read them off really fast. For Manny, it looks like we have Brazen Borrowers, Disdainful Strokes, some Paths, Mystical Disputes, Veil of Summers, Sigh, a couple of Braids, and for Chris, it looks like we have Leyline of the Voids, Collective Brutalities, Dead of Winter, Damping Spheres, some Disdainful Strokes, Mystical Disputes, and Ashiok.
Chris has some very strong cards to bring in here. I think the Ley Lines probably came in. The Damping Spheres probably came in. Mystical Dispute also probably came in. We do not see a ley line here to start, so that would suggest that maybe Chris has some other interaction in hand. Of note, against any breach combo decks, because the graveyard is such a resource, you generally would like to deal with that resource in absolutes, and by that I mean cards like Rest in Peace or Leyline of the Void that are actually exiling cards from the yard are far more effective than cards like Grafdigger's Cage that while the cage is in play, the opposing combo deck, like the breach deck, can just kind of spin its wheels and still get cards in the yard so that by the time they are able to deal with the cage, they can actually just go off because they have so much fodder. Whereas sometimes if you're playing a piece of graveyard hate like Rest in Peace or Leyline, they may just not have enough fodder even if they're able to get the Leyline off the board to go off immediately. It doesn't mean they're not worth playing, but I think if you have an option, something that exiles the yard entirely is a better choice.
Uh, okay, so hot take. Do you think Astrolabe is a problem?
I do not,
Okay.
but I plan on playing Boil to punish the people fetching all
You're
islands.
like, it's not a problem. It's wonderful.
It's a feature.
Yeah, it feels a little bit. Manny saying thought about not playing the Astrolabe because it feels a little bit greedy to play that second one when you have Veil.
Oh, yeah. I like Chris has kind of given us the slow thought process here. Okay, you can definitely have the Emery. That's fine. Are we going to like one by one kind of send cards back to the hand and then the final thing?
I feel like that was pretty like taking the combo piece there feels correct to me.
So I would actually argue because of what I was talking about earlier, I don't like taking the combo piece there because I think once you resolve a breach, if there's mana available, you can just get the combo piece back. So I would have liked to see the Veil of Summer taken.
It feels like Veil plus Mystical Disputer. That's like a little redundancy there.
I just don't feel like if you feel like what axes are you fighting on? Because putting the grinding station in the yard does nothing unless you're really able to choke Manny on mana because once you play the breach, the grinding station is just 3 cards exiled from the yard and 2 mana away from being cast.
It looks like Chris did bring in Ashiok.
Ashiok being able to kind of, like we were saying, just kind of deal with the yard and get rid of the fodder that Manny's built up, that makes a degree of sense to me.
That was total bait for the Mystical Dispute, I think.
I would agree.
Because then you can jam Ashiok. Or just Leyline right now is pretty decent. I guess Manny could technically E for 4.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking chat. We're still on kind of like the astrolabe topic. I think
So okay, right now you have to mill yourself. If you mill Manny, that's bad, and you can get Veld. But if you mill yourself, it still works.
ooh,
Did
moment of
did
truth.
Chris mill Manny? Oh,
Is it
Chris is a heads up player.
I think yeah, Chris is. Is it that bad if Manny has to burn the Veil of Summer on this? That's not really that bad. They're
Okay,
very heads up the players are
so
currently.
basically what happens is if Chris targets Manny, it is in Manny Veils. Chris can't be targeted, so Ashiok's trigger goes on the stack in response. Manny Veils, then the rest of it fizzles because it all happens once it starts. The first thing has to happen before the second thing happens. But the second part of Ashiok's ability is it exiles each opponent's graveyard. So if you target yourself, Veil of Summer for Manny doesn't do anything because you're not targeting Manny for the exile clause. But if the first part of Ashiok doesn't resolve, then the second part is not either. So the then is the key word in that. And it looks like Manny did fetch in response to Ashiok.
Ooh, yes. That is something that you can kind of easily, if you're thinking about other things, you can forget to do, and that is hugely punishing in this situation. Chris reminding Manny that we cannot fetch here. Yeah, pretty tough. They both players kind of were thinking about that ruling, and then it just kind of throws you off your rhythm for half a second. You say resolves, and you're like, oh no. We've seen a lot of Ashiok today. A lot of
Yeah,
Ashiok.
it's a very, very powerful sideboard card, and it's kind of hard to deal with. It has 5 loyalty. You get some minuses out of it, but a lot of times, I feel like a lot of times I don't want to minus it if its ability is game winning. In that situation, minusing it made sense because you don't want Manny to
Absolutely.
have fodder for potential breach turn, but when it's a search clause is what you're trying to use it to shut down. Minusing it is usually don't do that.
When Emery takes the sword and goes on combat duties, the the merfolk is not the best wielder of the sword on the picture.
It's like I give this to you. No.
Oh, just this was just so brutal for Manny not fetching because now the engineered explosives can't be put on three. Oh no, we have the
Yeah, we have
astrolabes. Okay,
astrolabes. Can't it could have been put on 4, but
so and I don't
are we
think you
just
want to.
adventuring to fetch?
That's so tough. I don't think you want to borrower the Ashiok here. This is such a rough spot. I think I might have just no, because if you tap the three, so I guess what it ruined was it makes it so Manny can't both play the EE on three and keep the Veil up. And it's pretty key for Manny to always have the Veil up here.
It's like we got a fatal push for Chris.
Chris is just playing it slow.
Oh wow! Now this. Well, side cost. Yeah.
I like that. I like that by Manny. I think that's probably the right use of the borrower there. You've now tapped Chris down.
Okay. Why is Emery still there?
So
Oh, we did we?
So Chris fatal pushed the Brazen Borrower that got hard
Oh, okay.
cast.
Wow, I thought we were getting an adventure cast, and then we are gonna push
No, yeah.
the Emery, and that is not what happened.
No, yeah. Manny was just trying to go for pressure here.
Probably to take out that Ashiok.
Yes, I think most definitely.
Huh. It's
And
interesting when you see people take lines that like you're not thinking about. Like I would have bounced Ashiok maybe, and then had the borrower out there on an adventure. Even though it's like sucks to do that, I feel like you made a mistake early and you have to like pivot, and then you really
sure.
need that mana.
Yeah, I guess it is, even though you do reset the loyalty, you probably don't want to think of it too hard that way because Chris also probably has cryptics and other ways of bouncing his own Ashiok. So, it's very likely that all your kind of work that you're putting in here to get this Ashiok is going to be for naught.
Yeah, and if you bounce the Ashiok, you still have a chance to go off, or like then Chris plays it and he minuses, but he has to tap a bunch of mana to do that, so he's not getting an Uro out or not holding up mana for counters.
It's just so. I mean, so Manny was able to loop the bobble there, which is pretty nice, and this bobble will dodge. If Chris does decide to use this Ashiok, the bobble can dodge that. So for the moment, Manny does have a draw engine that's going to be netting, an extra card a turn, which is not nothing. Interesting. So Chris minuses targeting Manny, and Manny, I think, heads up, does not decide to use the Veil of Summer. I think knows that maybe that's a bit of a bait in this case with Chris with full 4 open mana and a grip of cards. See Damping Sphere, so more lock pieces being added.
Noose is tightening.
There's no pressure currently, but there's an Uro sitting in the yard for Chris. So pressure can come on pretty quickly. Uro can fairly easily close the game in 3 turns.
You could EE on 1 and blow up Chris's Astrolabes, and then Chris wouldn't be able to cast Euro.
It's kind of funny. But you also blow up your own Astrolabes and then you can't cast your own Veil of Summer, which seems rough as well.
Well, you float a green first.
Sure. Okay, EE on 2. Manny's setting up to deal with this Damping Sphere when the time comes. This bobble's going to cost 1 now. Okay. So now we need... Okay, there we go. I think Chris is sitting on another Ashiok in hand. Wow, Chris just sitting on all lock pieces. Chris has an Ashiok, a Leyline of the Void, and I'm not sure what the other card was, but more lock pieces in hand for Chris here.
That's like a really cool thing about Uro is that you can have all these interactive lock pieces or counter spells. It's a Drown in the Lock is the other one that Chris has. Um, and once you like use all that stuff, like then you can just cast Uro and you have this other like chain of advantage
Yeah,
that
then you
also
have
is a
like
threat.
a crazy powerful threat.
Where I'm like, if you're playing Sultai before, you're like on a Tassiger maybe, which is just super mana intensive to get card advantage, or some pretty mopey beaters.
I just feel when I'm on Manny's side, as I just watch the lock pieces being added, it creates this sense of dread. This just sense of combo dread. This happened to me playing Breach the other night against Maverick and Legacy, where they just added like Thalias and Collector Oofs and all sorts of other things to the board, and had Mother of Runes to protect them. And my vision just started to like go gray and black, and I was like, I can't do it. All right,
Yes. I love it.
all
You're
right.
probably still gonna lose Manny, but I salute.
I mean, we're Manny's doing what we got to do here to try and break out of these locks. The sad thing about, I guess the sad and cool things about the EEs here, right, are when Manny blows up this EE on 4, it will get exiled from the ley line. However, Manny does have another EE in yard right now, so
Does
if
he?
yeah, right. So
Dun, dun,
if
dun.
Chris chooses to activate, okay,
So that was Chris played that out without minusing the first one for another activation off of Ashiok, just so that Manny wouldn't be able to fetch.
yeah, yeah, that is pretty tight. I mean, there is some additional value every time Chris mills Manny. I guess I'm not familiar with exactly how many win conditions this deck, Manny's deck plays. I don't know if we're on two of the little
I think it's just one of Lilthas's little friend.
Thassa's Oracle. And if
Yeah.
there's only one Thassa's Oracle, and maybe if the deck's not playing like Jace or Lab Maniac or some other win con, um, then Chris could just accidentally mill Manny's only win con. I don't know. Somebody who knows the deck better, is that a valid line? Or does the deck bring in stuff post board to add win cons, or is it just? I think it's a pretty like suicidal combo deck where you just kind of you have to do your thing to win. There's not really a great plan B as far as I know.
Well, chat says you should just side in to Merfolk deck.
That's true. Yeah, maybe that's the pivot.
Are there any? There's got to be some like shapeshifter or changeling artifacts.
Probs.
Have some lords in there. I think there's one Psy in the deck as an alternate win con,
Oh, okay.
and I think usually it's in the main deck. And
We've definitely talked about Urza in this build before, and honestly, the way that I feel is like Urza does not seem to be that great in this deck when I think about it, because your spin targets are so poor on average, and you basically the construct would be what has to win you the game, and you're not trying to build up as many permanents on the battlefield as the previous Urza decks were, or the Urza Oko decks.
yeah, and the mana you're not. The mana from your artifacts isn't a super big deal. I feel like Urza's home is in a mid-range deck
Yeah,
that you have a combo like Splinter Twin-esque and just like but a little bit more value. Like I could see playing Urza with Uro or just like the best Urza's in the best card deck.
sure.
Chat pointing out that Manny could win with a hardcast Oracle, which would be hilarious. Like Ashiok gets Manny down really low. You keep drawing some cards. Lead
That
off
would
with a
be
mystical
pretty
dispute.
funny. That would be pretty funny.
Oh man, we're getting down there. I can't quite. I'm a little bit thrown off with like depth perception there, but it looks like there's not that many cards in that
So
stack.
if chat's asking about the E that was popped to kill the ley line, I believe sacrificing it is part of the cost for engineered explosives. And if that's the case, then it would hit the yard as part of the cost, get exiled, or it would never hit the yard, I guess. It would just get exiled via ley lines. Um, via ley line, and then the ley line would get blown up. So I don't think it's supposed to be in the graveyard.
So Chris is sitting on a force of negation and a drown in the lock. Okay, drown in the lock is not going to counter anything.
Yep.
So if Manny can just keep
Okay.
what?
Get the force on the breach. Does Chris have? Does Chris just have lethal this turn? Is that why? Because
I don't think so.
oh yeah, because Manny has a blocker. So okay, we're gonna put force back on top maybe here. Ooh, Thoughtseize on top, and Manny's tapped down. So I didn't see if Manny ever used that Veil of Summer, but even if it's available here, Chris can nab the important piece of interaction.
Uh, Not very favored, but not entirely out of the water, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a little nervous about continuing to mill Manny if I'm Chris with the Ashiok. Like, if oh man, if Manny wins via like the naked Thassa's Oracle, that would be insane. And Manny or Chris cannot take Thassa's Oracle. There's no Thassa's Oracle in here. It does look like we're getting low on cards. I think there's probably still enough cards in that library that it's unlikely. But this is a pretty solid hand for Manny. There's 2 more breaches, so and that's it. Chris will be able to draw one off the Uro here, but there's no fetches anymore, so we can't like fetch a Sanctuary, put a counter on top, and ensure that that there's some safety there.
So, how big is Goyf? I assume we have got artifact, sorcery, land, instant, creature,
Enchantment.
enchantment. I mean,
Chris just swung. Okay. I was going to say we were close to forgetting that trigger there, but got it in. Let's see a block here. We lose 1 devotion to blue on that block.
yeah, but you do add a card to the graveyard.
You do. Not irrelevant. I don't know why the Ashiok's tapped, but I guess...
I think Chris was tapping it to be like, I've used this
okay.
turn already.
Okay.
I think Chris has navigated this game exceptionally well, has, used the cards
Wow.
effectively. But I do sort of just want to see Manny get a Thassa's Oracle win.
Yeah, why do you think we saw
I would have milled myself with that grinding station.
in response?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because I think if you're gonna win by through the breach, and you're
Yeah.
gonna need that.
Oh
like,
yeah, definitely. And there's plenty of Astrolabes out at this point, so I think you definitely could have tossed an Astrolabe there. Manny pretty frustrated about the fetch, and honestly, like that can be such a problem, right? Not only is it tough when you get tilted by a kind of a moment like that, but Manny had to have kind of the maximum potential tilt because he had to look at that fetch land every turn and be reminded that he could have like because your mind does that, right? Your mind's like, these are all the lines I could have had
I feel
if I
like
had 1 more mana, and it's such a waste of mental space to think about that because you don't, but your mind can't help but be like, this is what I would have had if I did what I wanted to do.
I feel like that was an insight into Ian's thought process and when he punts.
Does everybody not think like that?
I tend to. I've learned to accept when I make a mistake and then just try to make the best decisions from like that point going forward, and not to really like rub it. Like,
Well, that's what you want to do, of course. But when you have to like stare your mistake in the face like that, it's a lot harder. Every turn you have to see that uncracked fetch land. That's why I work in live broadcasting, because once my mistake has happened, I don't have to look at it ever again.
I mean, you don't go back and watch the videos.
I
like
do
that?
not.
Really?
I will sometimes if there's like a very particular thing that I want to see, but
I guess you have to edit them for YouTube, so you watch like a little bit of them.
oh yeah, for this stuff, yeah, I'll watch it. I'll watch it for like some of these matches, but I usually won't watch the whole thing. I'll just kind of find the beginning and the end, and if I remember that something crazy had happened, I'll watch through it.
I like chat's answer.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's one way to do it.
Maximum damage, just find a new shop once you screw up. There's a lot of shops in Portland.
Yeah, it's true. You could make the rounds for a while.
I do think if Manny had access to one more mana in a lot of those earlier turns, like 4, 5, and 6, that really would have changed the texture of the game, and we could have maybe gotten a win there, or at least gotten closer. And I don't think he was too far off.
Yeah, I mean the Oracle still existed in the deck, and that's a huge part of it. Um, of note, Chris has a ley line to start this game, which I think is I honestly think having the early ley line is huge because I think Chris can do better and better as the game goes on, and the ley line truly prevents Manny from being able to combo early. And cutting off the early combo, I think, just gives Chris kind of a much better chance to be able to take this game.
Especially when I feel like Chris's deck, you slow down Manny a lot with Leyline, but then you also can cast Leyline, and Manny's answer is to bounce it to your hand, and so a lot of times it's
Or
going
to
to be
EE on 4.
yes, our EE on 4, but it's going to be hard for Manny to put enough things in the yard, I think, in one turn to
Yeah.
really. You can do it, but the margins of like probabilities for the exact sequence of cards when you bounce Leyline for one turn is pretty slim.
This Breach combo deck's like super excited about playing green for Veil of Summer, but maybe they should be on white for Wear Tear. Uh,
Put
the
a silence in
Legacy
there.
version playing Jeskai was so huge. Jeskai was just such an amazing color combination for dealing with hate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Veil of Summer is better than Silence a lot of times. I mean, I guess you draw a card, but sometimes you draw the card. I don't know. I feel like there's. I don't necessarily think it's that much better that that's why you go to green if there's no other reason to be in green.
Right. I truly think Silence was better in the Legacy version. I think it's a little closer in Modern. Um, discard is a problem, especially in a deck like this that might have more trouble finding the breach in the first place because um, you don't have like amazing cantrips in Modern.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So protecting your breach once you find one can just be, I mean, that can be the game more so in Modern than in Legacy.
There's no Orum's Chant in Modern.
Yeah, that's true.
So Chris with, turn 0 action and then turn 1 action,
And we
hand
can
disruption is.
Yeah, and we can see just how mopey Manny's cards look with a ley line on the board, right? Grinding Station does nothing. Manny can cast this Emery, but it's a 3 mana or 2 mana 1/2. And you're not fueling anything here. So again, if you want to beat this deck, the early graveyard hate can be so good. Even something like a Relic of Progenitus that you can kind of pop when they're going to need the resources can be good.
Okay, do you like minusing Ashiok if you already have a leyline out?
No, I don't. I mean, no, I don't. Yeah, I mean you could hit Manny's win con, I guess, but I think just keeping it at high loyalty is probably the correct choice. However, yeah, because I guess with Manny's deck, it's not like he needs some higher number of resources to win at the end of the game. Like with some of the Breach decks, you actually do need some amount of cards in library to mill to be able to cast your spells again. But because this deck its main interest is getting so that there are no cards in library and casting Thassa's Oracle, you're not really like doing a whole lot of good by giving them less cards.
That's sort of my thought process, but I can see the desire to like nab the Thassa's Oracle.
Sure.
But I want, hmm, like you're getting them closer to their goal if you don't hit the Oracle.
Hmm. There's this specific kind of like pain in the voice of a combo player that's being prevented from doing literally anything by hate cards, and Manny has that camber
Yeah,
to his
I love
voice.
making the combo players feel that way.
Just when they're just kind of moving and groaning, and it's
Yeah.
just like I can't do any of the things that I want to do right now.
Because they have such like the giddiness when they're going through the
It's true.
combo in
Yeah.
game one. It's so excited
It's
and like
emotionally very swingy playing combo. The experience is.
I love just putting like turning the screws every turn a little bit tighter. Like, oh, you had your fun. Now it's time for me to have my fun.
Should Manny should be at 17. Did we accidentally hit the wrong life total at some point? Oh no, I think
We just had a swing with the
yeah, I think
Goif.
we just had a swing with Goif. So, hmm. That's that's probably all she wrote here.
Yeah.
Um, Manny's just stunted in 3 different ways at this point. Can't fetch, can't play multiple spells in a turn, has no yard. Uh,
I love it. I'm sorry, Manny. uh, I recently had that experience at playing Legacy where my Grizzlebrand reanimator opponent just like smushed me before I took a turn, and then I got to sideboard in all the hate cards and like had all of them the next 2 games, and they were just like pretty upset about it. But I don't know. It's like when that's what you're signing up for when.
yeah. Oh, for sure.
Oh, it does feel a little bit more precarious to do the all-in combo in Modern, though.
Oh yeah, I think it's way less powerful, like in relation to the format this modern Breach combo deck is than the Legacy version.
Yeah, where something like Storm, you can kind of like pivot to do a few different things in post board, like make some Goblin tokens. If you still leave in some of your like game one combo for grape shotting, you have like some bounce spells, just a wider range of things that you can do. Where it does feel like from the list I've seen for this breach combo, is it's kind of like pretty all in except for maybe a Psy or two, and that's about it from what I've seen. Have you seen anything that?
No,
Uh,
I completely agree, and I think kind of one large difference is that in the Legacy version, um, you just have such a better plan B with Monastery Mentor. And this deck just, the plan B seems really bad. And you're not even playing the best cards to deal with hate against you. Like you're not playing Wear Terrors, you're not playing Serenities. You don't have that amazing of options to deal with hate. Um, so I think it puts you in a much tougher spot, I think, playing this in Modern.
yeah, I'm curious if there is a Jeskai build. Seems like it might be. I mean, obviously, really small sample size here, and I think it's probably a pretty. I would say Chris has a lot of tools, even in the main deck, to deal with the combo. Um, Cards like Force of Negation are very strong in general, like with the Exile clause and just having Drown and Lock. Also pretty good when your opponent has a stocked graveyard. But I wonder if there's room to explore a Jeskai option in Modern of this Breach deck.
Yeah, even in this version, like playing in Emery and being able to like recur a bauble with a mentor on the battlefield, like mentor Mox Opal or Mox Amber bauble, getting a couple tokens, having the mentor plan as a backup seems pretty solid to me. It helps you get Ashioks off the field. Like, I don't know. I was a big fan of mentor, monastery mentor.
It sort of does force your opponent to then keep in worse cards too when they have to be afraid of mentor. It's like keeping in some removal instead of doing the full transition into all the hate cards.
Right.
When you only have one game plan, pre and post board, it just allows your opponents to like go full tilt with all the hate cards.
Right.
Well,
Well,
cool.
Breach is banned in Legacy now, so I don't get to talk about that combo deck anymore. But
Yeah,
anyway,
Ian and I have been texting all day about this, and I thought it was a pretty. I don't know if anyone in chat plays Legacy. If you do, maybe speak up. But I thought it. I was glad that they banned it. I feel like Wizards usually just like lets Legacy sort of linger in this like forgotten realm for a long time when stuff is awful, and then we'll ban something after like 8 months. But I was a fan. I think Ian, what were your feelings?
I was unhappy about it. I'm not gonna like bore the people that came here to watch Modern too long
Okay.
about it, but I don't like when Wizards bans things and doesn't present us with the statistics. And I know that even sometimes when they do present us with stats, they're maybe hand-picked to make things look a certain way. But I hate when people are like, oh, we should ban card X or card Y for reasons of unfunness. Um, I am fine with people saying that in like newer formats for newer players, Pioneer. I think, okay, if you want that to be your format that doesn't have things that are unfun. I don't think that I don't like hearing people complain about things being unfun in Legacy ever because that is the format for that stuff. Like Legacy is a format of things that are unfun for some people. That's why you have turn one Grizzlebrand protected. Like that's just part of the format. You just don't play the format if you're worried about having an unfun play experience because of something your opponent's doing. And I feel like Breach got a little bit of that. But again, I don't know the stats. So really I just want Wizards to release real stats that can back up their decisions if they're going to make our financial purchases meaningless.
Sounds like we need to hire Hacker Man and send him on the job.
Yeah.
Get some data.
Yeah.
Is
So
huh?
coronavirus
Oh, I actually got pairings. We can.
looks like it looks like we may have to head out to get another match here. We do have pairings, so we are going to head out and get our final round of the day. So stay tuned for our last match of Modern Mondays at Guardian Games.